This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic!
What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is February 10th, 2025. Jonathan Osborne here, joined by my co-host, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, what's up?
Go Magic, go on the road to victory. You like that? You like that song? Oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So we're recording this after this.
So that is not funny at all.
So
I have never ever got on here and mocked you like that.
I'm not mocking. I'm just
that's
the Eagles.
Crazy.
I'm not mocking anything. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. I'm happy about that. A lot of America is happy about that. You're not, and I am genuinely sorry. But I am happy that as of right now, this whole is Patrick Mahomes the new GOAT, better than Tom Brady, all these things can at least take a nap for an offseason. I'm excited about that. And yes, I'm excited that the Chiefs didn't win. But I know it hurts for you. But maybe in a couple days you might feel differently. I don't know. Maybe not.
I will never feel differently. And this is the thing. I didn't want the Chiefs to win. I wanted the Eagles to lose. Like I didn't want the Chiefs there. Like I wanted a Bills Commanders Super Bowl. That's what I wanted. Yeah. I would have been happy with that. I would have had close friends that would have been happy either way. But the fact, like, this is the absolute worst season of Giants football of my entire life, of how bad they were, the fact that they blew the number one pick at the end of the year, like the one thing that we had to look forward to. Now it seems like they're going to get over leveraged to trade up. And then I had to watch the Eagles and the running back that I've been rooting for the past 6 years win the Super Bowl. Like,
yeah, I know. It's tough.
You know, it's not even like seeing your girlfriend with her new boyfriend. It's like your girlfriend's ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend is like a handsome billionaire who has your dream job. You know what I'm saying? And like all of her family likes him way more than they liked you, and like all this kind of stuff. Like, it's literally one of the worst feelings I've ever had as a sports fan. When you combine what happened with the Giants season and the Eagles and Saquon with what's been going on with the Magic for the past month, now, you know, there's some signs of life, and we'll talk about that obviously. But when you talk about like what happened with the Yankees, and just this has been one of the most painful like 5-month stretches of sports of my entire life.
Well, just at least you don't have to add being a Florida State fan into that mix. So it's that's been tough.
That definitely would make it worse. Well, hey, North Carolina basketball, they're terrible. So
yeah, that's true.
You know, it just kind of it is what it is. But yeah, you know, I'm happy that some people are happy out there, but I was hate watching and seething that game. The thing, and we're going to get off the NFL in just a second here, Kev, but the Chiefs being the team that won more one-score games than any other team in NFL history, and you could probably count like 5 or 6 games at least that come off the top of my mind where the refs like made a critical call that really could have gone either way in a critical moment of the game. And then, I mean, even in the Bills game with the fourth down with Josh Allen, and now that just rolls into the Super Bowl and they ended up, you know, being absolutely crushed. It's like maybe the Bills wouldn't have lost this bad, you know, right, in this game, or maybe the Ravens or just anybody else. They just completely outclassed and made for a really, really painful evening.
It's a bad Super Bowl. It was really bad. Was. Yeah. Again, I'm glad that the Chiefs didn't win another one, because the three-peat stuff would have just been miserable to hear for a while.
The cheat-peat, man.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I sold my soul to the devil tonight because I was rooting for that cheat-peat. That first, what was it, offensive pass interference?
Yeah.
I thought it was a terrible call, but I was so for it. It felt gross, man, but it was just like whatever I have to sacrifice for these Eagles to lose, and they just destroyed them. So good for them, I guess. Well, we have some actually like things to, other than Magic basketball. This is Magic basketball adjacent. Something to look forward to coming up here in the next week. If you're a sneakerhead, even if you're not, Paolo Banchero is like first player edition underneath the Jordan brand. is being released February 17th. So a week from today, as you're listening to this, it's the Jordan Air model, but it is the Seattle Rotary colorway, giving an ode to Paolo Banchero when he used to play for the Rotary Club and the Boys and Girls Club, as a young kid. It's this kind of like teal and lime green, black kind of like colored speckled, colorway. I think it looks really sick. I'm looking forward to these. And for me, obviously like anything that, Paolo comes out with, we want to purchase, we want to support and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really good opportunity to send Jordan a message of like, if you give this kid his own signature shoe, it's going to do well. So that drops February 17th at select retailers, but also on jordan.com. That's probably where I'll head to try to, get my pair of that. And as Magic fans, like I think these are only going to be like $110, $115. Like, for a Jordan model, that's, relatively not inexpensive, but some of their signature models are, like $170 plus dollars. So the fact that this is a pretty relatively affordable shoe and it's Paolo Banchero, and just again send a good message to Jordan that, hey, give this kid a signature shoe and it'll do well. I know that I'm going to get a pair. Kevin, are you going to cop a pair of these?
Yeah, I sure am. I'm going to try to be cool and actually wear them too, maybe every once in a while. I'll try to fake it till I make it. No, but I think they are actually pretty sick looking. And I'll definitely be grabbing them a week from today.
I mean, black shirt, black hat, black pants, those shoes, that's a pretty good fit.
It could go with this too. Let's acknowledge the fact that I'm not wearing black or blue today. Like, I mean, this is me breaking out of my comfort zone, but I had to with, the Duvin drop and everything. I mean, this shirt, I know you wore this last week, I think, on the show. But this, welcome to the Arena shirt from Duvin with a menacing looking stuff is sick. And then, got the stuff hat to go with it. So yeah. But yeah, I'll definitely grab this. Oh, well, I appreciate that.
Very much looking forward to that. So again, that's going to be February 17th. So a week from today, so next Monday. So again, select retailers. I'm guessing, if you have like a Foot Locker or Champs or something like that, near or a Finish Line, maybe you'll be able to cop it there. But if not, you can find that on jordan.com. So I'm excited to see like how quickly that sells out. Does it sell out? Who knows? But yeah, definitely looking forward to getting those. So not a ton of Magic news. The Magic did fill out their final two-way spot. They have signed guard Ethan Thompson from the Osceola Magic to a two-way contract. So Ethan Thompson with the Osceola Magic this year, averaging 17.5 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 39% from the floor, 37% from the three-point line, like almost 7 attempts per game. Not what I would call like a sharpshooter or anything like that, but seems to be a capable shooter. Him being the third two-way spot, wouldn't expect to see him a ton. But it is pretty interesting, again, that the Magic traded 2 G League, first-round picks for Colin Castleton. Seemed like the Magic could use another sort of like emergency or reserve big. But, they've decided to go with Ethan Thompson. Again, don't expect really to see him hit the floor unless we get hit with another just crazy wave of injuries, which at this point of the year would really mark the end of the season, unfortunately. So we're hoping that does not happen and we're able to avoid another injury bug, so to speak. But yeah, Kev, what were your thoughts on the announcement of Ethan Thompson being signed to the last two-way?
Pretty surprised, honestly. Like, again, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a major roster move. Anytime you're talking about, two-way guys, you hope it's not a major roster move because that means you're really injured. But I was surprised because of the Mo Wagner injury, right? Like, I thought once Mo went down, if we were to eventually add the third two-way guy, it would be a big. And so that definitely surprised me. And considering that the Magic's roster is full and the two-way spots are full, that means they're, without moving someone, waiving someone at this point, there is no opportunity to bolster that front court now. And so that was definitely interesting. If you ask me, knock on wood, the Magic are one injury away from any of those guys from being in like borderline desperation mode when it comes to the amount of big bodies that you have for the rest of the season. And so again, that's why I assumed that the third two-way would go to a big such as Castleton, like you mentioned. So yeah, kind of surprised me, but hopefully at the end of the day, it's not a situation where you have to, call up anybody, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hoping it's a move that, not really of any significant consequence. But thought that was pretty interesting as well. Let's go ahead really quickly get into the weekly state of the Magic. This week, the Magic went 2-2 with a loss to the Warriors, a win over the Kings, a loss to the Nuggets, and then a win over the Spurs on Saturday. Now sitting at 26-28, the Magic are 8th in the Eastern Conference, 17 games back of first place Cleveland, 12 games back of Boston, 9 back of New York, 5 back of Indiana, 3.5 games back of Milwaukee. It seems like they're going to be without Giannis, for a little bit of time here. So we'll see if they slide or what happens there. A game and a half back of Detroit, 1 game back of Miami, only a half game up on Atlanta, and 3.5 games up on Chicago. The Magic are 29th in offensive rating this year. So offensive rating is how many points per 100 possessions do you score? And the Magic have scored 107.2 points per 100 possessions, and they're 3rd in defensive rating. So how many points per 100 possessions do you give up as a defense? 3rd in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 109, and 19th in net rating with a negative net rating of 1.8. And Kevin, the last 15 games, the Magic are 30th in offensive rating with an offensive rating of 104.4, 18th in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 115.3, and 29th in net rating with a negative net rating of 10.9. So the only team that is worse is the Washington Wizards during that stretch with a negative net rating of 12.2. So you're 1.3 points per 100 possessions away from being the absolute worst team in the league in terms of efficiency over the course of the last 15 games. Like, we're not exaggerating. Like, if you're not watching these games and you just come to the show and you want to hear us talk about them because you've noticed like the losses piling up, or maybe you've got a lot going on, you're not able to watch these games. When we talk about how bad this team has played, we're not exaggerating. Like, they have legitimately been one of the worst teams in the league over the last month.
Yeah, it's been painful to watch, and I think that's why there's been a lot of not just frustration, but even some level of panic over the last several weeks. Because it's just been hard to watch, and it's been a shell of the team that we thought we had and the team we thought we knew. And so I think that's why this week especially there were a lot of emotions, and maybe still some continuing emotions. As obviously the West Coast trip has ended and the trade deadline came and went. But if Saturday was any indication, hopefully this stretch coming up here at home could be the beginning of turning the tide, hopefully.
And we'll talk more about that as we talk about the week ahead. But, just to put it pretty bluntly, like the next 10 games are the season. Like, if you play well, you can turn things around. If you don't play well, the season in terms of what the goals were, like what you set out for at the beginning of the season, like that's over, right? Like, it doesn't mean you can't make the play-in or whatever, but you're just most likely not going to be able to achieve like what you set out for, at the beginning of the season here. Taking a quick look at the injury report ahead of Monday's game against Atlanta, Jalen Suggs is still doubtful, coming back from the left quad contusion, and Mo Wagner out with the ACL, and Mac McClung, Ethan Thompson, both of those guys are ruled out. Those are just G League guys. They're not going to dress. You can only dress 13 on a given night, so 2 of those guys are going to be ruled out by default. Kevin, the Jalen Suggs injury really. Not that I'm getting concerned, but it's starting to feel more and more likely that we don't see Jalen back until after the All-Star break, because he went from being questionable and then downgraded to doubtful to now he's just being ruled out, not ruled out, but ruled as doubtful, like ahead of these games. Like, they're not even really pretending that it's I don't want to say possible, but doubtful means like it's really unlikely that this guy is going to be able to play.
Yeah.
So what has been now, I believe, about 2 weeks since we've got Jalen back for, what was like 25 minutes, and then he goes out against Detroit. So it's unfortunate that it's taken this long. I think you're probably able to win another couple of games, in this stretch. Maybe you don't lose 4 in a row if you have Jalen in the lineup. And yeah, at this point, it's like we've got 3 days until the All-Star break. He's still doubtful. Just shut him down, get him healthy over the All-Star break, and bring him back when you open back up against Atlanta.
Yeah, and just so people are aware, we haven't really touched on this. When Jonathan says hold them out till the All-Star break, the All-Star break is this week, folks. Like it's here. So Magic play Monday and Wednesday, and then we're in the All-Star break. So because of that, I'm with you. I would be very surprised if they brought him back for just 2 games before having a week off. And so, yeah, I can totally see that. And not that you should maybe play to the schedule, but especially considering the fact that it's the Hawks and the Hornets. 2 of the worst teams in the league. The Hawks on paper, in the standings at least, not as bad, but they've had some injuries in the trades and everything, and it looks like they might be mailing in this season. So you feel like the Magic without Jalen Suggs should be able to take care of business at home against those 2 teams. But I think all of that combined, yeah, I would be surprised if we saw Jalen before the All-Star break.
Yeah. And then last thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into the Spurs game from Saturday is Friday, so the day after the trade deadline. Jeff Weltman made an appearance on Open Mic with Mike Bianchi on 96.9 The Game in Orlando, local sports talk radio there. It was like a 16-minute interview, I want to say, Kevin, like talking about the state of the team, what they tried to accomplish at the trade deadline, why they weren't able to accomplish their goals at the trade deadline. And there were a few interesting quotes that came from that. To me, the thing that stood out the most was in talking about trade negotiations with other teams, around the deadline and at the deadline was, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's not a direct quote, but Jeff Weltman talked about how other teams have seen the way that the Magic have been struggling recently and taking a look at their record, and they try to quote unquote try to squeeze the Magic a bit. And Jeff said, they try to make equitable deals, but when teams are trying to squeeze you, it's hard to feel that you're getting a equal and fair deal. To which I guess in a vacuum I understand, and we can talk about both of our thoughts on the interview and this quote specifically, but basically what it feels like we're doing is we are sticking with what we got, right? Like the improvement right now needs to come from within. It doesn't seem like the Magic are going to be players in the buyout market. They don't really have a roster spot unless they're going to waive somebody. Are you going to waive Caleb Houston or Corey Joseph? I think that's pretty unlikely. So what you have is what you have. And we all are aware that unless this team goes back to just playing with their hair on fire every single night like they have been for stretches of this season, if the shooting doesn't turn around in a very significant way, there's a real possibility that you don't have a very strong end to the season. And if you don't, and you end up in the play-in, or you end up as the 6th seed, and you get swept in the first round, and things don't really go your way heading into the offseason, your negotiating leverage with other teams in that regard is not going to be any better. I think it's possible that it could be even worse. So in my mind, it's like, well, what do we think could possibly happen in the offseason once we stood pat at the deadline? The rest of the season didn't really go our way. We didn't have a lot of success in the playoffs. Everybody kind of understands the pressure around this team to improve. Like, you do not have a choice. You have to make a move at this offseason now. And I think we stand the opportunity to be squeezed even harder by other teams come the offseason. Kevin, what were your thoughts on that quote? What are your thoughts like around the logic or just about the interview with Mike Bianchi in general?
Yeah, it's tough. First off, Jeff Weltman is never going to come out and obviously straight up just say what was going on behind closed doors, or the moves they tried to make, or offers they received, or anything like that. He's never going to do that. He's not like who was it?
John Hammond.
No. Yes, John Hammond. But also, I was going to say Denver. I forget their freaking
Calvin Booth.
Yes, Calvin Booth. Yeah. If you guys haven't seen that, you should go watch that, because his post deadline press conference was very different, calling his own players by name as players that were floated around in the trade market. Anyway, so you're never going to get that from him, right? So short of that, he did give some insights into what was going on. The thing for me, like you said, he mentioned, well, actually, I don't think we actually mentioned this part, was one of the things that he talked about was not necessarily putting a lot of chips in for a guy who's only going to be here for potentially just the rest of this year and be gone in the summer, right? Or be gone next summer, right? He spoke about that specifically, like he was just looking to acquire guys that he thought would be here for, handful of years, right? And that was kind of interesting to me because it's not uncommon in this league to acquire basically a rental, right? Like if your team is drowning, if your team is struggling, if you've got injuries, if you've got clear holes in your roster or in your skill set that you have on your team, it is not uncommon to go out and get a guy and say, look, is there a chance this guy is just with us through the end of this season? Yes. But number one, he's going to help us this season. Number two, there's a chance over the course of those months that we can convince him to stay, right? And so the fact that Jeff Weltman just straight up said they weren't playing that game at all is interesting and maybe a little bit disappointing, again, because the issues on this team are so glaring, like they're so obvious. And if there were certain guys available that could help alleviate some of the offensive woes that this team has, is it worth throwing something at that deal to at least just elevate the season, right? Like, especially at the time on Thursday's deadline, I mean, we were free falling. I know we had just won in Sacramento the night before, but as we just talked about at the top of the show, like the last month has been quite truly the worst, next to worst basketball in the league. And so I think the Magic probably needed to, try to grab a lifeline of some kind, even if that person was only going to be here for, a few months. But again, once they get here, they see the culture, they get to play with Paolo and Franz, and maybe they stay. I don't know. So that part was a little disappointing to me. But yeah, again, you're never going to get a whole lot from Jeff Weltman. Who were those players that he's talking about? Who's to say? Was it a guy that was going to be the 11th man on the bench, or was it a guy who's going to be a 6th man, right? Like, there's just no way to know the caliber of player that Jeff Weltman was trying to acquire when he says they were getting squeezed. Again, that could mean anything. If you're trying to get 11th player, maybe they're trying to get 2 second rounders instead of 1. Or if you're trying to get a Kobe White, Anthony Simon, something like that, and then maybe they are really trying to squeeze you for some serious assets. Who knows? But yeah, it was definitely some interesting comments from Jeff Weltman.
Yeah, and kind of further to that point about somebody being a rental, like at this point with the way that the Magic's cap situation is set up, like the start of the next transaction window, Franz and Jalen's extensions are going to kick in. Wendell's next extension, does it kick in this year or the following year? I'm not quite sure. Regardless of the Wendell deal, your cap space is gone. Like your ability to go out in free agency, you have a very limited number of tools that you can utilize. Like you don't have open cap space to use to sign guys. You can sign guys to minimum deals. You can sign, one guy to like the mid level exception, which this year is just under like $13 million. So like, think of the guys who are signing new deals for $13 million. Like Jalen Suggs is making $30 million, like moving forward, right? So we're not talking about like super significant rotation pieces that you're signing for the mid-level exception. Like a lot of times that's going to be like a really good veteran who sees an up-and-coming team who may be towards the end of his career, but it can still contribute a little bit. Like you're not going out and making like a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope level signing for the mid-level exception moving forward. So your cap space and the ability to make moves in free agency is pretty much gone. The way that you're going to improve moving forward is through trades and through the draft. So you trade for somebody, it's kind of your job to convince them to stay. Like if you're going out and getting a guy who has a year and a few months left on his deal, like if you can't, and if that guy's a good fit and you can see him being successful here basketball wise in Orlando, and you can't sell him on everything that is going on here, like that seems like kind of an issue. Again, we don't exactly know what was said and what these deals were, but I do just find it a little bit hard to believe that there's nobody out there in the NBA that we couldn't have made a deal for, that again we also could have convinced to be here, not super long term, but over the another 2-3 years, whatever the case may be. And it does seem in my eyes, like it is potentially, a failing of the front office that they weren't able to get a deal done right now. Right. And again, sometimes that happens. Like everybody has jobs. We talk about, guys on the team. If they're not shooting the ball well, we say they're not shooting the ball well. If guys are shooting the ball well, we say guys are shooting the ball well. If the general manager isn't able to make a trade, we say, hey, he wasn't able to make a trade. Or if he makes a great trade or makes a great draft pick, we talk about all that kind of stuff. So, just trying to be as fair as we can in that regard. But heading into the offseason, I am concerned. Like I'm going to go into the offseason, apprehensive about, what sort of deals may need to be made, because I do think that other teams could view the Magic now as desperate and just have leverage in negotiations. And, if we're trying to continue to improve this thing and build on it, it kind of feels like the front office may have to make a pretty big swing. And you have to make sure that you connect on that swing, because at this point of like the team building process and where this team is trying to go trajectory wise, if you make a big swing and you miss, not only are you not moving the team forward, but you could potentially be moving the team backward. So it's a massive summer for the Magic. Like I'm not trying to exaggerate, but this is the biggest offseason that the Magic have had probably since the losing in the finals in 2009.
Yeah, I think
maybe you can maybe the Dwight, those trades, in the summer of what was that, 2012, but this is for what we have and what is at stake, right? Like you're building a young team like this, you have enough missteps, it can all crumble.
Correct.
So there's just a lot that going into this next offseason.
Yeah, I think if you're talking strictly from free agents and trades and that kind of stuff, yeah. But I mean, yeah. On the other hand, draft wise, we've had some pretty monumental, off seasons on that front.
Yeah,
but
not and I should have specified not drafts notwithstanding,
right?
Just pure. All we have is really trades is what we have to go off of here.
Right. So yeah, while you were talking, I did double check. Yeah, Wendell's extension, the new one, kicks in the same time. What will be Paolo's? So not this summer, but next summer is when that'll kick in. So add that to the list of sizable contracts that could potentially be against the Magic cap if Wendell is still around. This time next year. Yeah, I think the last thing I'll just add to this, the part that is just adds to the frustration. You talk about maybe some of the potential guys. Again, who knows what potential guys the Magic could have acquired. It's not like at least I don't believe the Magic were going for any of these superstars that were on the table, right? It wasn't like the Magic were going for a Jimmy Butler or a Kevin Durant, who was rumored to be on the block, or any of those Luka Doncic, obviously. But the players that they were potentially looking out for, right? Look across the league and see none of those deals were really that crazy, right? If you're talking about guys that are role players, solid role players, but role players. I know we talked already about the DeAndre Hunter deal. We talked about that on Thursday night. That trade, they gave a couple firsts, so that's not nothing, right? DeAndre Hunter may have been a different level, and especially a different level of potential than some of the guys we were potentially looking at. So I don't know that the Magic's deal would have been anything like that, but that's not an insane trade. Was it a slight overpay? Maybe. But again, when you're trying to improve a roster and there's one specific thing that you think you need, you're going to have to overpay a little bit. That's kind of how it goes. And so at what level was it we were getting squeezed versus I just don't want to lose this trade? I don't want to be looked at as the Magic lost a trade, even if we were acquiring a player that could help us in a certain situation. I don't know, right? So I think it's the other part of frustration is when we look around the league, like we talked about on Thursday. We were one of 4 teams that did not make a trade prior to the deadline. 4 teams in the entire league. 26 teams made deals. The Magic were one of the 4 that didn't. Again, just because you have an opportunity to make a trade doesn't mean you should. But for a team that has the flaws as blatant as they are with the Magic, it felt like it needed to happen. And so I think that's why a lot of Magic fans are pretty disappointed.
We now take a quick break to bring you one of, if not our favorite segments that we do each week. It is the Jam Hot Chicken Jam of the Week, where we find the best Orlando Magic jam from the last week, talk about it. And this segment, again, is sponsored by our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken. We're going to go back to Saturday night to the first quarter, Magic versus the Spurs, with 2:36 in the game, or in the first quarter, rather. 5 seconds left on the shot clock. De'Aaron Fox goes to take a three. Tristan da Silva kind of deflects it, kind of blocks it, ends up collecting the basketball. He's running. He's got the 2-on-1. It's Tristan da Silva and Anthony Black, with Stephon Castle getting back on defense. Tristan da Silva lobs it up to AB, who grabs it and jams it with two hands to cut the lead to 5. Again, Tristan and Anthony Black coming in, giving that defensive, offensive punch off the bench, helped get the Magic back in that game in the first quarter. That is this week's Jam Hot Chicken Jam of the Week. And Jam Hot Chicken is proudly serving the city beautiful, bringing jams, culture, and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park. Jam Hot Chicken is a Nashville and LA-inspired hot chicken shack. They are locally owned and operated in Winter Park, Florida by diehard Magic fans. They're located over there at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13 in Hannibal Square. You can follow them at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media, and check them out at jamhotchickenfl.com to access their menu, order online, and find all things Jam Hot. And if you don't want to go to their physical location, you can get on Uber Eats and get that delivered right to your house. So again, a big shout out to our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken.
That's a pretty deserving jam of the week. May not be the most beautiful or schnazziest jam, but that was important. That was a really important stretch of the game, and credit to those guys for helping bring the Magic back into the game. Very deserving Jam Hot Chicken Jam of the Week. Also deserving of a shout out is our Improv 221, Bruv Sal, Drew Gooden, Dylan Fay, and Suggs Muggs. They are 5 of our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons over at patreon.com/The Sixth Man Show. Our patrons, they're the people that financially support the show. They're the ones that believe in our cause so much, which is to raise up this Magic community and build more Magic fans and build a stronger community of Magic fans. They believe in it so much they're willing to financially support it and make it possible. And you can do that too over at patreon.com/The Sixth Man Show. We have several different tiers available that you can choose from, starting as low as $2 a month, again, to support the cause of raising up this Magic fan community. And so, again, if you're interested in that, you want to join our Patreon community, go to patreon.com/The Sixth Man Show. And let's now get back to the episode.
Yeah, last thing that I'll kind of say is another thing that people have pointed out, and it's not nothing, when they say, well, look at the guys that Magic fans were looking at, Cam Johnson, Kobe White, Colin Sexton, like none of those guys were moved. Okay, well, if you can't get a big fish, it doesn't mean you shouldn't get a fish at all, right? Like, go out and make a move for somebody that can help what we're trying to do here, right? Like, just standing pat, again, just you're putting a lot of your eggs in the basket that we're going to get healthy and everything is going to turn around. And we have praised Jeff Weltman up and down over the years for being patient and not skipping steps and everything like that. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I talked about, Thursday night on our post game live that like my patience is like kind of run out at this point. And I think everybody's patience has kind of run out. Like, I think Jeff Weltman understands, like, going into this offseason, he has to make a move. Like, you cannot just run this back another year going into the offseason. And I'm going to be so anxious to see what happens. And look, if Jeff Weltman goes out there and he makes a deal, even if it's an overpay, but it brings like stuff to this team that the Magic desperately need, we're going to be here praising him 100%, especially if like that ends up hitting and working out and all of those kind of stuff. But that's just kind of the name of the game. Like, you do a good job, you're going to get praised. You don't do as good of a job, you're going to get criticized. So, but at this point, really where I'm trying to shift my focus and my energy is just what can this team do the last however many games it is at this point. I'm not even going to try to sit here and do the math, 20 some odd games or 30 games the rest of the way here. What can this team do? Can we still, achieve goals? Like, we saw a glimpse of it Saturday night, which is I think where we'll go now against the San Antonio Spurs, because it felt like the Magic got off to like an okay start. It wasn't anything that like really, got you excited like we've seen, over the course of, the last couple of weeks against, maybe like a Utah or a Golden State, where it feels like you get off to a good start and then everything just sort of goes sideways. This was an entertaining game. It was really back and forth. Magic got down by 13, I believe it was, in the third quarter before they went on a run, but they were down a little bit in the first half. Jamal Mosley goes to Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva. Those two guys really flipped the game for the Magic with their defense and with their energy and with some of their shot making. Franz Wagner was awesome as well. Had a stretch in the first half where he hits multiple threes to really keep the Magic in the game. I think like regain the lead at one point in that second quarter. Magic were down by 3 at the half, down by as much as 13 in that third. Go on a little bit of a run to close the third, because right in that stretch of the third, it was like, okay, another bad third quarter for the Magic. This game's about to go all the way sideways. They make a run. They're down 3 going into the fourth quarter. And the fourth quarter, like, really felt like, okay, who's gonna slide first? Who's gonna mess up first? And then with about 3 minutes left, the Magic went down by 6, I believe. And to me, that was when I was like, okay, this is where in previous games, it seems like the Magic are kind of going to let go of the rope and probably end up losing this game. But from there, actually, they had then De'Aaron Fox splits the free throws. That's right, to make it a 7-point game. Anthony Black comes down the other end, hits a big 3 with 3:22 to go, cut the lead to 4. About a minute and a half later, J.I. hits a 3 to cut the lead to 1. Vassell misses a jump shot. Paolo comes back down the other end. He hits a 16-foot pull-up to give the Magic a 1-point lead with a minute and a half. Wemby comes back down the other end, hits a shot to give the Spurs a 1-point lead. The Magic miss. Wemby rebounds the ball, gives it to Fox. Fox turns it over. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope steals the ball. And then Paolo Banchero hits the turnaround at the free throw line with 25 seconds left to give the Magic a 112-111 lead. And then Spurs bring the ball up. We end up fouling them. Had a foul to give. They inbound the ball. Anthony Black gets switched on to Victor Wembanyama. Does a fantastic job defensively at the top of the key to make him, basically force a shot there and not get to the rim. He misses it. J.I. gets the rebound. Magic win the game. Was a nail biter. Was a game that you desperately felt like you had to win. And people might look at the standings and be like, oh, wow, you beat the 22-28 San Antonio Spurs coming off the second night of a back-to-back. The 22-28 San Antonio Spurs doesn't really give a lot of context to the fact that they just added an all-NBA guy in De'Aaron Fox, and the fact that Harrison Barnes started, what was
6
it,
of 6?
6 of 6, and ended up 7 of 8 from behind the three-point line, was just shooting the ball really, really well in this game, and San Antonio did as well. But just a massive win for the Magic. Franz Wagner was awesome. Paolo struggled offensively, but came through in the clutch when you really needed him to. Jonathan Isaac was awesome off the bench. Cole Anthony, I felt, was really good in his minutes. Anthony Black, 20 points, 8 of 9, 3 of 3 from behind the arc. A lot of guys had a massive hand in winning this game. And I think we can talk a little bit about Paolo, but, he has proven plenty of times he can have a really crappy game, and you give him the ball in the last couple of minutes and he can go out and get buckets and win you the game. And he did that. And I'm just hoping that, because again, the defense was really good in stretches in this game as well. Some of the highest highs we've seen in a couple of weeks, they weren't really able to sustain that for large stretches of the game. But the kind of chaotic, causing havoc type of defense that we're accustomed to seeing from this team, we saw that in stretches. And then, 112 points, that most nights for this team, if they defend, that's going to be enough to win. And then to cap it off with a Paolo Banchero game winner, really, really big win. And hopefully this can be a launching point for the rest of the season for this team.
Yeah. And first off, I just want to say this was a really good game. If you're a neutral, this was really fun. Back and forth. I think it was 11 lead changes, 9 ties, or maybe it was vice versa. But either way, 20 different times in this game. Either the lead changed or it was
14
tied.
lead changes, 12 ties.
Well, yeah, there you go. Even more. It must have gone up since the post game. That's crazy. Yeah, it did. Wow, 14 and 12. So yeah, 26 times in this game, it was either tied or the lead changed. Like, that's crazy. That's a really fun game. And so I'm sure neutrals really enjoyed it. I mean, even I'm sure Magic fans and Spurs fans enjoyed it. Obviously, down the stretch, it gets a little more stressful. So anyway, that out of the way, great game. The other thing, though, for me was, there were stretches of this game where it looked like Magic basketball. You know, with all its flaws that it has, it also has the potential to be not just exciting, but impactful and winning, right? And so, yeah, to see guys flying around, getting stops, being active, getting deflections. I mean, especially deflections. Like, that's when the Magic are getting deflections, that's when you know, like, we're playing at our best defensively. And we had a ton of those on Saturday. And then, yeah, to the thought of, wow, we're getting excited over a win against a 22-win team, second night of back-to-back. You got to understand, like, the last week we had lost to teams that had 10 wins and, 14 wins, right? Like, it didn't matter who we were playing against. This team just needed a win to kind of not just get back in the win column, but try to get some mojo back. And so knowing that this team was back at home, knowing that you had to, start over basically, right? Like, the last few weeks have been a disaster, but this homestand here is an opportunity to kick things back into gear. And that's what they did. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty. You talked about Paolo. Didn't have the best of three quarters, but fourth quarter had several big buckets. Like you said, a lot of guys stepped up. Anthony Black with 20 points on the night, 3 for 3 from three. I mean, he was huge. Jonathan Isaac, very impactful on both ends. But I mean, Franz Wagner just carried you for three quarters. I mean, he was unreal. And I loved how aggressive he was, not afraid of Wemby. Yeah, did Wemby get the best of him a couple times, especially early? Yes. But as the game went on, Franz was able to figure it out, find his spots to where he could, score over him or around him or through him or whatever, to the tune of 33 points and 12 boards and 5 assists. And then, yeah, down the stretch, Paolo takes you home. And yeah, all in all, a fun game, great victory, and a very, very good way to set the tone for this homestand.
Yeah, Anthony Black, he's not going to give you 20 a night. He's not going to shoot 8 of 9 and 3 of 3 from behind the arc.
Yeah.
But if he's aggressive, it just changes the dynamic of the team and the bench unit, especially because, Cole right now being in the starting lineup, on the bench unit, you've got Tristan, you've got J.I., you've got Wendell, you've got Gary. Like, we're just still that Mo Wagner sized hole in the bench unit, I think, really can't be talked about enough. And hey, this game, first game that Mo was back in the building, sitting behind the bench, that was awesome to see for him. This team really misses his presence, I think, so much. And having him back around the team, I think, can only help. We always talk about how it's a little bit different when you're dressed and you're playing in the game. Your voice just is a little bit louder, in that aspect. But having him around is awesome. But like, we need Anthony Black to step up in a major way, right? And if he's able to not give you 20 a night, but if he's able to give you 12 to 14 a night and fill those like Mo Wagner, numbers offensively, just going to be such a big help, as Franz seems to be all the way back. Like, Franz is playing really well, the last handful of games. Paolo, he's talked about how he's still working to get that conditioning back, and he does not seem confident right now. I don't know if it is the conditioning or what exactly is going on, but he just doesn't look like the same guy. Like, we've seen him healthy and at his best, where he's hunting mismatches and his goal is just to get to the rim and get to the free throw line. And we're just not seeing that from him. Again, still fully believe in Paolo, give him the ball. And Franz talked about it after the game. Like, we want the ball in his hands in moments like that, because that, like, out of anybody on the team, he's the guy that can just really make special shots. But Kevin, what do you think is going on with Paolo?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really probably the only explanation, really, is still coming back from injury. And we talked about this when he was out, and then as we knew he was starting to come back, like, we didn't think it would be the progress would be linear necessarily, right? Like, we knew there'd be some ups and downs. I mean, did we expect it to be, still some ups and downs a month later, maybe not, but it's not unheard of. And I think it's also a confirmation of what we grew to understand of that Franz and Paolo's injuries, though on paper they were the same, both, the oblique tear, but in grade or seriousness, they clearly were not, right? That's why Franz came back earlier. It seems like potentially Paolo was completely out of all, not just basketball, operations, but also physical, exercise or whatever, out of that for a longer period of time than Franz. And so I think we're seeing maybe the byproduct of that now. And then, yeah, I mean, it's also, I think maybe in part due to Paolo's style of play. Like he likes to play bully ball, and that's what he's best at. That's what his body was built to do. Right. And those things aren't really conducive to an injury like that. And so, finding his way, and like you said, like we just haven't seen him be like that really hardly at all. Like maybe there's a couple plays a game, maybe, where he puts his head down and gets in the paint. But I mean, free throws, that'll give you everything you need to know. All the information you need to know is in the amount of free throws or lack thereof that Paolo's been shooting since he's been back. He just has 4 on Saturday. Like he was, towards the top of the league the last couple of seasons when it comes to free throws attempted per game. And so, yeah, it's just he's not playing the same way that we are used to seeing him, but by no means am I sitting here concerned about that. Like I'm not concerned about it at all. And I think, there's still plenty of time in the season. Like we said, I think we got like 28 games to go, plenty of time for him to get ramped back up and hopefully be at 100% by the time the playoffs roll around.
Yeah. Right now, since like last 15 games, Paolo is averaging 6.1 free throw attempts per game. Last year averaged, right at something? 7, and the year before that it was 7.4. So yeah, his free throw attempts are definitely down, a bit since he's come back. And you just watch the games and you can tell that. It also just seems like he's not getting the benefit of the doubt on a lot of calls recently, but just doesn't have the same level of aggression right now in terms of getting to the rim. The last thing that I wanted to talk about, and maybe not specific to this game, but just kind of overall, Kevin, when the front office has made the bet for this team that, they're going to be able to play better, over the, last, 25 to 30 games, wherever we're at right now, left in the season, for everything to turn around, like, what do you think has to happen? And what do you think is like the most realistic path to that? And do you think it actually will happen?
I mean, I think it's almost like a recipe, right? There's some ingredients here, some ingredients there that'll make it work. I genuinely think being at home is going to be ingredient number one, really. For better or worse, that's been the calling card of this team for the last couple of seasons. Like, obviously, every team's going to play better at home, but this team, the splits between home and road are always very significant, which isn't uncommon for a younger team, right? So that's step one, and that's what you have for the next month. From now until March 6th, excuse me, this team is at home except for one quick trip to Atlanta after the All-Star break, right? So a lot of home games, a lot of winnable opponents. So that's step one.
And it's 28 games left.
28 games, yep.
Yeah.
So that's step one. You have all these home games here. Step two, I think, and it kind of feeds off of, ingredient number one, I guess, is that defensive intensity. Like you said, when you went to the State of the Magic, the last 15 games, what is it? We're 18th in defensive rating. Like that is so far removed from what we are used to and what we honestly expect from this team. Yes. Are you down Jalen Suggs, who is an all defensive player, right? Yeah. But that shouldn't mean that the rest of the defensive, setup just falls apart just because you're missing a guy. Should it suffer? Sure. But should it fall apart to the tune of being 18th in the league? No, I don't think so. And so I'd like to see that intensity pick up like we saw in stretches on Saturday, and I think it will. Again, part of that is you're playing some subpar teams during this trip or during this homestand. Not all of them, but some of them are teams you'd expect to be able to clamp down on defensively. So those things, but then again, you add a Jalen Suggs hopefully after the All-Star break, and that'll only help things. And so those are the things I think are the ingredients to it. And then obviously add in, maybe Paolo starting to play better. And do I think it'll happen? I think so. I don't know that I'm ready to say this team's going to go on an all-world stretch and, win 11 out of 12 or, something like that. But I do think this team can get back to winning ways during this stretch. The key for me is going to be, what do they do after that, right? Like, I genuinely believe this team can go maybe 8-3 during this homestand. They've already got one win, to their name during this. I think 8-3 is possible. But then you turn around and have a bunch of road games, really difficult road games right after it. And if this team just falls apart on the road like we had the last month, then, all of this is for nothing. So do I think it's going to happen? Yes. And then, we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah. So, where I'm at, obviously, like the defense, I talked about it, last 15 games, even though you're third overall for the league, like the last 15 games is really, kind of the sample size that we should be looking at. You're 18th in the league. Like, you have to, over the last 28 games, you have to be, like, I think borderline a top 5 defense. Like top 10, I don't think is going to be enough. Yeah. And then guys need to shoot a little bit better. Like, we don't need everybody sort of like getting back to their averages, but as a team, we need to be shooting like 33, 34% over the last 28 games. Like, just a few more makes a game, I think, will make a big difference for this team. And then we need Franz and Paolo to be Franz and Paolo. We need both of those guys to play to the level that they are capable of. And if we don't, you're going to be in big trouble. You have 28 games left. You are right now a game and a half out of the play-in. I'm sorry. Well, in the play-in. Another game and a half, you're 6 and you're out of the play-in. I think you probably have to get to like 43, 44 wins to, be 6 and not 7 or 8. So that means you would have to go 18-10 the rest of the way here. The last month would tell me that I'm an idiot to think that is possible. But like the last amount of optimism that I have for this season, I want to believe this team can do that. But it's going to be tough. Like, Milwaukee might slide a little bit. Who knows how long Giannis is going to be out? But like, the Pistons are good. I forget. They're adding Dennis Schroeder. I think that's going to help them. The Heat, adding Andrew Wiggins, I think that's going to help them. Like, it's going to be tough. I don't like. I hate being like the doom and gloom fan, but it just, this last month has really beaten me down at least. I feel like it's like 50-50 that you're able to go on a run like that and not find yourself in the play-in here.
Right. The good news is, like you said, it's 1.5 games, so it's not like outlandish to suggest it. But like you said, we're chasing 2 teams for that right now, Detroit and Miami. They do have tougher schedules over their remaining games. They have more remaining games, right? Obviously, we've talked about many times on the show, the Magic have still played the most games in the league. Still, here we sit February 9th. It's been this way since day one. So there are some gaps coming up in the Magic schedule. And so that means that other teams are going to have to squeeze, a couple more, 3 games in 4 nights or whatever, that kind of thing. So it's very possible. The flip side of that is you own the tiebreaker with the Pistons, if I'm remembering correctly. The Heat tiebreaker is 2-2. So that'll come down to division record, which right now it's almost even. They're 5-3 in the division. You're 5-2. So there's a potential chance that you could be level with those teams, but win on tiebreaker. So lots of factors there. I think it's still very possible, but I mean, again, not to beat a dead horse here, but it all rides on this stretch here. Like these 10 games, all these home games. If you're not able, like I said, I think like 8-3 would be, I think, pretty ideal. Like considering the stretch of difficult teams that do come to Kia Center. If you go 7-4, okay, but anything worse than that, I think you're bound for the play-in. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, anything worse than 7-4 would be pretty bad. Okay,
why don't we go ahead and break down the week ahead? And it's a short week. You've only got 2 games here, 3 days until the All-Star break starts. Monday, home versus the Atlanta Hawks. Wednesday, at home versus the Charlotte Hornets. Kevin, I have to believe this team wins both of these games and heads into the All-Star break with a 3-game winning streak. We talked about it a few minutes ago. Atlanta seemed to be mostly sellers at the deadline. Charlotte hasn't been that good. Now they've got the drama going on with Mark Williams where they made the trade, didn't go through. He's coming back to the Hornets. Just one of the more strange things that I can remember happening around a trade deadline. Just a really crazy deadline in general. I just have to believe the Magic win both of those games and take a 3-game winning streak into the All-Star break.
Have to. And like I just said, if we're targeting at least 8-3 at this homestand, has to include 2 wins this week, right? Atlanta, Charlotte, you got to win them both at home. I think they will. I'm also going to pick 2-0. I'll be pretty disappointed if that's not the case, right? Either game, Magic really, I think, on paper are better than both teams, and so yeah, I'm going to go 2-0 as well.
You and I, we talked Thursday night, the night of the deadline after the Denver loss, and looking at the next 11 games, 10 of those coming at home, and we said this is the season. Like you've got to start racking up wins and pile them up pretty quickly here. So we won the first one, really good start, and the remaining 10 games, home for Atlanta, home for Charlotte, at Atlanta, home for Memphis, home for Washington, home for Cleveland, home for Golden State, home for Toronto, home for Chicago. So again, like that really feels like it's the season. Like the toughest of those games would be Memphis, Cleveland, Golden State, which, you almost beat Golden State in Golden State.
Right.
Now they're going to look a little bit different, obviously, with Jimmy Butler. Those 10 games, like it feels like you need to go like 7-3, 8-2. If you can, you go 6-4, you'll be 500 at that point. You'll be 32-32 with, what would that be? With at that point 18 games left. And then you've got to go like 12-6 the rest of the way to hit that 44 win mark. Like
in a tougher schedule too,
right?
Because like after this stretch, you go through another tough stretch there of the schedule. Yeah, so that's
So it feels like these next 10 games, like you've got to at least find a way to go 7-3.
Yeah, I think if your goal is to get out of the play-in and just be in the playoffs, yeah, I think, like I said, 8-3 total on the homestand. So yeah, that would be 7-3 the rest of the way. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I'll just add really fast. When we look at the standings, you mentioned Milwaukee. The Magic trail Milwaukee by now 3.5 games. Are they going to fall a little bit with Giannis? Maybe, but you also don't own that tiebreaker. They've swept you so far this season. They're 3-0, and so that's a team you have to be ahead of if you're going to try to pass them in the standings. I've talked about this on the post game live. You're now what is that? 4.5 games out of the 4 seed. That was the original goal for this team. Home court advantage. That's gone, right, Jonathan? Like 4.5 games. Yeah, having to pass 5 teams to get there, that feels like that's just a distant memory at this point, right? Am I crazy? Like, is that still within reach, or you think that's done?
I mean, we've seen the Magic have 2 like pretty significant win streaks this season. Like we go back to the beginning of the year, you won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row, and then another 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, 2 6-game win streaks. Like you'd have to go on like a 6 to 8 game win streak for that to feel reachable. You can do it during this stretch that we're talking about, but like you have to close out the All-Star break or before the All-Star break with these 2 wins. You have to get Jalen Suggs, and you have to start like going to work right away. Yeah. Like you cannot mess around coming out of the All-Star break. Paolo, after the Sacramento game last week, talked about how he's still trying to work on getting back like into like elite conditioning, and how he's actually taking the All-Star break. He said, to continue to do that, like we need like 50-point game Paolo back. Like we need what date was that? We need October 28th.
Yeah,
Paolo Banchero back on February 20th. Like there's no messing around. We can't have guys on cold streaks. We can't have guys in and out of the lineup. We can't have guys missing significant time. Like, you've been talking about this since May, since you lost Game 7. Like, this is what you've been set out to do, and you have the opportunity to do it. You've got to go out and seize it. And if you don't start racking up wins very, very quickly, I think I'm pretty comfortable saying that we're not going to be in like the 9-10 game. Like, I would bet, a good amount of money that we wouldn't be there. So I do. It would be hard for me to see the Magic losing 2 straight like do or die games to completely miss the postseason. But a month and a half ago, I didn't think that we were going to be talking about this at all. But that's just where we are.
Yeah.
All right, Kev. Trying to think. I don't really have anything else. You want to cover anything else? No.
Go Magic. Win games.
How do you feel about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next season?
I don't know. I'm just over football, man. Football's sad. It's a sad sport.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Really,
it'll be interesting. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Let's go ahead and wrap this one up for Kevin Tucker. This has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!